Well, I guess marrying that old hag was impossible. I'm looking for a younger bride, so I canceled the engagement. My fiancé, who is just 1 year younger, called me an old hag. That alone was shocking, but to cancel the engagement too. My fiancé, Bob, had a captivating charm. Always surrounded by people, Bob carried himself with confidence. He cheated on me more than once, not just once or twice. Each time, I forgave him. I clenched my fist and welcomed Bob with a welcome home, and at night, I quietly shed tears of frustration alone. I couldn't take it anymore. I can't forgive Bob. No, maybe I've never truly forgiven him even once. I've just pretended and covered it up to be with him because I want to. Now, the backlash is hitting me all at once. I looked at Bob. Bob. I won't let your whims and selfishness control me anymore. From now on, I'll live by my own will. As the first step, let's give Bob a punishment. Now, are you prepared? My name is Catherine O'Connor. Just the other day, I celebrated my 32nd birthday with my ex-fiancé Bob. I've been in a relationship with Bob for 18 years. When we met, we were still in junior high school. Since then, it feels like I've been living according to Bob's whims. Nodding to Bob's selfishness, accepting Bob's requests. As we did that, both Bob and I crossed the age of 30. I began to think about marrying Bob, and I thought Bob would too. So he gave me an engagement ring. I thought that's why he gave it to me. I wonder how much more I can endure. The days of betrayal from Bob. I met Bob when I was a second-year junior high school student. Bob Reynolds, a first-year student who had just enrolled, confessed to me. "Please go out with me." "Huh, really?" I was taken aback. Being confessed to by someone I had just met was quite unexpected. But I also felt happy. Bob was already tall and handsome, and above all, I felt proud to be the one confessed to. I had a sense of superiority and excitement that I might date a boy before anyone else. So I nodded. "Sure, I'm Bob Reynolds. Nice to meet you." He called me that once, and then Bob blushed and looked at me. He hesitated and said something like this. "Is it okay if we hold hands?" "Huh, Bob?" "Sure, right, Catherine?" Mischievous voice and expression. That's when I completely fell for Bob. But the elation didn't last long. "Catherine, you're dating Bob, right?" "Oh, yeah." I wondered why my classmates knew about it. Perhaps my confusion showed, as another classmate chimed in. "Bob has been spreading the word. If you're a student at this school, everyone probably knows." "What, Bob?" I couldn't believe it. "Why would you do something like that?" After school, I asked Bob that question. "If it gets to the teacher, it'll be a big problem." "I'm sorry. But I was so happy. I wanted everyone to know that Catherine is my girlfriend." Bob answered, his head down. "Be more careful next time." "Yeah, I'd be happy if you could." At this point, I forgave Bob. In fact, I found Bob cute beyond words. If I had a little brother, would I feel this way? No. Back then, I recognized that he was a much more annoying yet sweet presence than a little brother. That's why Bob's initial betrayal hurt so much. A mocking voice saying, "She's the school's top beauty, huh?" It was so different from what was directed at me that I didn't immediately realize it was Bob's voice. However, once I did, there was no mistaking it was him. During school break time, I was about to visit Bob's class when I overheard that exchange in the hallway. "This school isn't low level, is it? She's below average there. But her figure is good, isn't it? Oh yeah, her chest? Her boobs are definitely big. I'm looking forward to that. Well, that's a relief. Bob is a man after all." "Oh, yeah." Sleazy laughter erupted. A group of boys, with Bob at the center, had gathered. They seemed to be excited about my appearance. I leaned against the wall, unable to move from the spot. My legs were trembling. "Catherine, are you okay?" "Oh, yeah." My classmates came over, suspicious of my behavior. Unaware, Bob continued to frolic with the other boys. "What's with that? So low." "It's important to go along with the conversation," I answered, my voice choked with tears. "Catherine, I guess he's embarrassed by the teasing from others. That's why he said such things." My words stopped there. Tears started to overflow. Accompanied by my classmates, I cried as I went back to my classroom. From then on, Bob often darkened my heart. If there was a girl at another school who was popular, he would immediately go after her. It seems that some of them actually tried to get serious with Bob. "Catherine, you have to go." Spurred on by my classmates, I headed to the scene of Bob's date with his affair. When he saw me, Bob's face turned pale. "Catherine." "Who's this?" The girl he was cheating with was prettier than many others. If I had left things as they were, maybe Bob would have moved on to her. Suppressing my desire to run away, I answered. "I'm Bob's girlfriend." "Catherine." Bob called my name almost like a scream. The other girl gave Bob a stern look. "Oh. Wait. You've been lying." "That's the worst." "No, it's not like that." Bob watched her leave with a pained voice and expression. Left behind, Bob turned to me, looking completely frightened. "Catherine, I need to tell you something." "What do you mean?" My voice was cold. In response, Bob floundered like a fish out of water, opening and closing his mouth. But eventually, he seemed to find an excuse. "She was so persistent." Whenever I confronted him, Bob would always say this. "It was just one date. You're my main girl, Catherine." "Yeah." I nodded. Not because I was convinced, but because I knew arguing further wouldn't make Bob apologize. And more than anything, I didn't want to be disliked by Bob for nagging about his affairs. What started as a relationship of superiority had become dominated by Bob. Even about my future, Bob insisted I choose a high school that suited his academic level and convenience. "We should go to the same high school, right?" "Yeah, but my teacher said I could go to a better one." "Are you going to abandon me?" Bob looked at me with tearful eyes. At this point, I could see through his fake tears. Still, I couldn't stand up to him. "Okay, I'll go to the same high school as you, Bob." "Great. Wait for me there, Catherine." When his opinion prevailed, Bob showed a sweet smile. It was a reward for me, and I kept pushing myself just to see that smile. When I told my parents which high school I wanted to go to, my mom openly showed her disappointment in me. "Why are you going to such a boring high school?" "That's right. You should graduate from a decent college and get a job with a future," my dad added. But I insisted, all my friends are going to that high school, using a poor lie. In reality, my friends had chosen better high schools. And I knew there was no benefit in matching my choices to Bob's poor academic performance. Lying to my parents like this was a first for me. I was torn between feeling guilty towards my parents and keeping my promise to Bob. "I'm disappointed in you," they said, ending the conversation. From the next day, my parents visibly started treating me differently. In contrast, Bob was in a great mood. "Catherine, thank you. Now we'll be together in high school too." "Yeah." I was confused about whether I was doing the right thing or making a mistake. Bob was smiling. All that mattered was that. After starting high school, I frequently had troubles with my parents. "I spent too much on in-game purchases this month." "Is the game that interesting?" "Yeah, it's really fun. You should try it, Catherine." "Maybe I will." The casual game I started in such a light-hearted manner turned out to be the beginning of new troubles. Normally, I wouldn't have cared so much, because I never really liked the game. The problem was its friend feature. Players cooperated in events, and Bob invited me to the game for this purpose. "Catherine, your character is weak. Pull more gotcha to strengthen our team." "I'm sorry." Following Bob's directions in the game, our characters did get stronger. But the spending increased too. My mom noticed. Not only did you go to a bad school, now you're wasting money on games. What are you doing? But my friends. If those are your friends, you're better off alone. Don't say that. For the first time, I talked back to my mom. I wouldn't let her say Bob wasn't good for me. Talking back to your parents. Mom looked angry and sad, a complex expression on her face. Since then, I hardly spoke with my parents. When I discussed this with Bob, he showed his usual smile. That's fine. It's your life, Catherine. Is it? I wondered if Bob saying that was appropriate. Was I really living my life? Or was I just following Bob's orders, forced into a life convenient for him? By the time I realized this, it was too late. After graduating from high school, I chose to work. My parents had completely given up on me. I couldn't even think of going to college. Especially since Bob seemed against the idea. Catherine, you wouldn't betray me, right? Yeah. I nodded as usual. Bob had dropped out of high school. There's no need for me at school after Catherine graduates. But in reality, it was due to a conflict with a teacher. No company wanted to hire Bob with only a middle school education. At best, he could only find part-time jobs, and even there, he often caused trouble. That boss is so arrogant, it's annoying. Did you quit your job again? I asked, feeling somewhat fed up. By this time, Bob and I had started living together. After my parents found out about my relationship with Bob, they finally kicked me out. Bob, who had a strained relationship with his family, moved into my apartment with just his belongings. It's the start of a fun life together. Yeah. Bob seemed genuinely happy. But I was just forcing a smile. I knew it would just be more trouble. People around me said I should break up with Bob. He's just a freeloader now. He's trying to work, at least. He wants to. But I saw him skip work and go to the gaming arcade. Who said that? My voice was cold. My friends gradually started distancing themselves from me. I knew. I knew they were right. Bob wasn't thinking about my happiness. But I thought I couldn't be happy without Bob. I really believed that. Then it happened. I can't marry an old lady. I'm gonna find a younger fiancé, so our engagement is off, LOL. Bob took off the engagement ring from my finger and declared. Bob! I was out of my mind. Bob's smile was no longer sweet. It was a nasty smirk, looking down on me. Catherine, you're 32, right? Not young, clearly. I'm only a year older than you. I tried a futile retort. Bob was always dismissive about his own age. He simply wanted to switch to a younger, cuter girl. And Bob had already cheated on me with several girls. He was good-looking and knew how to charm. Seducing girls was easy for him. The relationships didn't last because of Bob's selfish nature and financial unreliability. I was the witness to that. The biggest victim of Bob's deceit. So, thanks for everything. Bye, Catherine. Bob waved his hand flippantly. The ring he had taken from my finger gripped in it. I wondered who he intended to give that ring to next. I thought to myself. And then, I made a decision. Bob. I won't let you have your way anymore. Goodbye, Bob. Oh, you understand? That's my Catherine, always got why I liked you. Is that so? It seemed like Bob's feelings for me were a thing of the past. Maybe they never existed in the first place. Now that you understand, please leave. Huh? Forgot? I'm the one who rented this apartment. Ah, I see. So you're kicking me out, huh? Bob said with a thin smile. Bob smirked, thinking I was joking. I smiled too. And those clothes. What? Everything you're wearing, I bought it. Well, keep the underwear. But return the rest. I'll sell them to a thrift store. You're telling me to leave in just my underwear? Bob shouted. I must have at least one outfit I bought myself. Nope. I have the receipts if you need proof. Receipts? Yes, from the clothing store. I kept all of them, along with every bill, groceries, utilities, everything. What the heck? Bob's voice grew pitiful. You don't need to take the toothbrush, right? And since we have 2 sets of dishes, I'll throw them out. Then at least give me. No. You can only take what you bought yourself. Bob looked out the window in despair. It's snowing outside. Yeah. I nodded calmly. Bob, shivering, begged. At least let me keep the jacket, please. Fine. You can wear what's underneath. But not the jacket. It's a brand worth good money. I smiled emptily. The jacket I bought for Bob. He had insisted, and I had indulged him. Just a year ago. The black long coat looked great on him. At that time, I was so proud. You're a devil. I'm fine with being a devil. I'm just an old lady anyway. I waved my hand at the door and closed it, thinking I need to change the locks soon. I had taken back the spare key from Bob, but he might still have another one. You'll regret treating me this way. I'll never see you again. I heard Bob's parting words. I slumped down, holding my head. I was anxious. I had impulsively broken up with him, but could I really come to hate Bob? After all the time we spent together. Bob would no longer be in my coming days. I had lost his smile forever. I lifted my head, leaning against the door, and began to laugh. Bob is gone, he's really gone. I finally felt free. There was a sense of relief and fulfillment. Bob had long ceased to be a romantic interest. I was just with him out of inertia. Being with Bob meant constantly worrying about upsetting him, making it impossible to be myself. I understand that clearly now. I don't need you anymore, Bob. This turned out to be just right. He left on his own. A single tear ran down my cheek. Ah! I realized then. I had written him off long ago. He was nothing but harmful to me, and I was surprised at my own weakness for having turned a blind eye. And yet, there was a slight feeling of loneliness. But that feeling would end today. Get ready for tomorrow, Bob. I looked around the empty room and murmured, let's do this. I was switching gears. It was going to be busy. The first thing to do was definitely changing the locks. The landlord said, it's good you broke up. Your boyfriend was not well liked in the apartment. Is that so? I accepted the words more calmly than I thought I would. The old me would have been furious. Any negative talk about Bob was unbearable. But now, it's different. Like a cloudy sky clearing up rapidly, my thoughts were also becoming clear. Please take care of the lock change. Sure, I'll handle it, replied the landlord with a firm nod. As I was halfway up the stairs back to my apartment, another tenant stopped me. Excuse me. What can I do for you? You were engaged to Bob, right? It's ex-fiancé now. Oh, so you broke up. The tenant furrowed her brows in distress. After looking around, she, appearing to be about a college student's age, said, please come to my apartment. Why? I've been harassed by him. He spread rumors that we're dating, and his stalking has gotten worse. It's scary. Therefore, she said, looking intently at me, clasping her hands together as if in prayer. He said he'd marry me after breaking up with you. What? But you seem normal, not like the terrible woman he described. He spoke ill of me? I couldn't hide my dismay. Guided by her, I visited her room. There, I was told about Bob's disturbing behavior, which was truly disheartening to hear. I knew he sometimes took money from my wallet, but to buy you gifts with it? Yes. He barely works, yet he's always splurging. Turns out, he was stealing from his fiancé's wallet. I looked up at the ceiling, astounded. While drinking the tea she offered, the woman said, "I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry." "It's okay. We're both suffering because of the same man," I replied with a wry smile. "But now, we need to think about the future." "The future?" She blinked in surprise. I said, "Yes. How are we going to deal with Bob now?" I shared my ideas with her. And she listened intently, nodding and interjecting occasionally. Then I added something important. "I actually knew about you before." "What?" She looked shocked. It was a natural reaction. Even though we lived in the same apartment, our paths rarely crossed. Our interaction was limited to nodding in the hallways due to different life rhythms. I pulled out a bundle of documents from my shoe. "Please don't be upset when you open this. I had all of Bob's affairs investigated by a private detective." "What?" She looked at me. Her eyes filled with a mix of fear and surprise. I smiled reassuringly, trying to ease her tension. "The report said that Bob was the one obsessively fixating on you one-sidedly." "Please believe me. I have nothing to do with him." "I believe you. Please calm down." "Thank you." She sighed in relief. "The report clarified that out of 5 women, 3 were in clear romantic relationships with Bob. You and another woman were just being pursued by him." "Is that so? There are others suffering the same as me." Emily hung her head, visibly pained. Knowing there were others in similar situations probably evoked empathy and sympathy in her. I leaned in slightly and suggested, "Shall we meet them?" "Meet them?" "Yes, the 3 of us, together with you, can confront Bob." "Confront him? But how?" "Through legal action," I said, emphasizing my words. "First, let's consult the police and get a stalking assessment. Bob isn't smart enough to give up easily. We'll have our chance to press charges." "To use me as bait to lure him?" "That's not what I meant." I was flustered. Indeed. It sounded like I was imposing danger on her. As I was about to retract my suggestion, she nodded. "I'll do it." "Do what?" "I'll be the bait. If it means defeating him." "Are you sure?" I felt like I saw a fire in her eyes. "Then, from now on, we're allies." "Yes." "Oh, I'm Emily Johnson, by the way." She introduced herself, a bit belatedly but politely. This introduction led to Emily and me becoming closer. Unaware of our plans, Bob, as expected, continued to press Emily for marriage. I decided it was time to confront Bob. Together with Emily. Seeing me, Bob screamed in shock. "What the heck, Emily, why are you with Catherine?" "We are allies," Emily replied, avoiding his gaze. "It's not just us." "Why are you all here?" Bob exclaimed, bewildered. 4 young and beautiful women appeared. They were all women Bob had pursued. One of them, like Emily, had been a victim of his stalking. And looked at Bob with anger-filled eyes. The other 3 acknowledged they had been in relationships with Bob, under the pretense of marriage. In essence, all of them had been deceived by Bob. "I didn't know you had a fiancé, Bob." "It's a misunderstanding. I've already broken up with her." "Then what about the other girls?" "They all seem to think they're going to marry you, including me." "Ah." Including myself, there were 6 of us women. Among them, a particularly assertive woman was enraged to learn Bob had played with her feelings. When she realized that Bob had deceived her just for fun, she became furiously angry with immense intensity. Now, she was confronting him. Bob, being yelled at by the woman, turned to me with tearful eyes. With tears in his eyes, he said, "Catherine, it was you, wasn't it? You told them all." "Yes, I did," I replied, tilting my head. "But Bob, you're the one who deceived everyone." "Even so, to call them all at once. Help, forgive me." Bob was surrounded by the other women, each airing their grievances. everyone had been genuinely in love with Bob. I understood. I had felt the same way. Watching Bob and the women, I felt a mix of pride and strangeness. A year has passed since that incident. Emily and I continued to stay in touch, now visiting each other's apartments. So, you see. As I was talking, my smartphone rang. I chose to ignore it, continuing my story. Emily looked puzzled. "Aren't you going to answer that, Catherine?" "Oh, it's fine. It's nothing important." "Really?" Emily blinked in surprise. I smiled wryly, already knowing who was calling. It was Bob. "Bob keeps calling me every time he gets a new girlfriend." "Why?" "He's upset because Ashley tells each new girlfriend about his past. He wants me to make her stop." "Oh." Emily sighed, seeming to expect such behavior from Ashley, who was one of the women confronting Bob that day. I doubt she'd listen even if I asked her. She's not the type to easily heed others' advice. "I guess so." We shared a bitter laugh. Bob's calls came at all hours. During meals, at work, even while I was with friends. Enough already. Once, unable to bear it, I answered his call. Bob sounded desperate. "Please, make her stop. Ashley's making my life hell. You brought this on yourself." I replied, thinking about the evening's plans. Tonight was a potluck party at Emily's house. My friend Emily and her friends were gathering to enjoy a winter night around a hot pot. Excited for the evening, I wasn't really listening to Bob's complaints. I just said what was on my mind, nothing more. "You made 6 women, including me, unhappy. That's a fact you have to live with. You talk about bearing consequences, but I'm not even dating anyone now. Emily treats me like a stalker. Every time I find a new girlfriend, instead of starting over, thanks to Ashley's interference, they all end up leaving me. I can't help you with that." Ashley's grudge seemed deep. Even if I tried to stop her, it wouldn't mean much. "Is that all you called for? Just that? What's with your cold response? Don't you feel a bit sorry for me?" "No, I don't. I'm a heartless old lady, remember?" With that, I ended the call. Then, I muttered to myself. I'm still bothered by being called old. Surprised by my own reaction. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. That's when I saw him. "Oh, Catherine. Long time no see." A man was approaching with a smile. At first, I didn't recognize him, but there was a hint of familiarity in his smile. Thanks to that, I was able to recall who he was. "Michael? Mom told me to come by this area. Never thought I'd run into you, Catherine." The cheerful man was Michael, my childhood friend. Bob kept contacting me even after all that had happened. I was amazed and exasperated by his relentless efforts, but I continued to ignore him. I once changed my phone number, but he even showed up at my apartment, making it hard to turn him away. So, I reluctantly kept the same number and just ignored his calls. "I can have a serious talk with him if you want." "No, it's fine. I've decided not to get involved with Bob anymore." "Okay then." Michael seemed a bit disappointed as he nodded. He had returned from New York for a matchmaking meeting arranged by his mother. "How about you, Catherine?" "No, I'm estranged from my parents." "That's harsh." Michael frowned. "Your ex really messed up your life. I was naive. I dreamed and depended on him." Now I understand. Bob was the center of my life. Constantly worrying about his mood, living on his words. I'm fine now. I can walk alone. "If you say so." Michael seemed not fully convinced. To assure him, I pulled out something. "What's that?" "My college diploma. I secretly enrolled in an online university while I was with Bob. I didn't want to disappoint my parents who had hopes for me. But I couldn't betray Bob either. So I chose to study in my spare time." "That's surprising." Michael laughed heartily. That's good, right? Now you can aim for a career upgrade. Yeah, maybe. We laughed together, then my phone rang again. Michael scratched his head and said, Hey, Catherine. What? Why don't you date me instead? What are you talking about? I was dumbfounded. The phone kept ringing. Just because you don't like arranged meetings. It's not about that. Michael's voice was serious. His smile had faded, replaced by a look of tension. I've always had feelings for you. Are you joking? I'm serious. Michael argued with a flushed face. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but smile genuinely. I eventually gave in to Michael's persistence and started dating him. Being the same age as Michael played a part, but we also connected well in conversation. This was a refreshing change from my time with Bob, where I always had to conform to his ways. The ease and openness I found in my relationship with Michael felt almost surreal. The calls from Bob still continued. Each time the phone rang, Michael would look annoyed or sad. But when I took his hand and smiled, he'd relax. It's okay. You're here with me. Catherine. Michael looked momentarily uneasy, but then nodded firmly. I'll protect you, Catherine. I'm an old lady, you know. If you're an old lady, then I'm an old man. We're the same age. Right. Maybe those words didn't hold much weight for Michael. But they helped me finally break free from the curse of being